Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be painting Glutos Orscollion, Lord of Gluttony. Yeah, Glutos Orscollion. Little fun fact, if you type his name into Amazon, you'll get up a bunch of glucose tablets. But anyway, since this model is so not really physically large, but there's so much to it and so many different characters and colors, I will be breaking this project up into multiple pieces so I can give the proper time and focus and attention to each piece as needed, similar to what I did with the Gluttony. So first we're going to start off with his Chariot pullers. Assembly is very straightforward and simple. There's no real issues. You can assemble them fully without having any problems. I'm also going to assemble as well the thing that changed them to the Chariot, because it's going to have very similar colors to them, so might as well. And once they're fully assembled, we're going to paint them with Bright Touch Gray Car Primer. And now with Cadian Flesh Tone, Kislev Flesh, Golem Flesh, and Contrast Medium, we're going to paint the skin, the largest parts of the models. So we're going to start off with a base layer of Cadian Flesh Tone all over. And once that is done, we're going to go straight to Kislev Flesh. We're not going to do mixes in between, and we're going to dry brush all over the flesh. And you can see here you can subtly tell the differences between the skin tones and such, and I think it came off pretty well. The box art recommended a very light color to go with it, so I decided to take Pallid Witch Flesh and I just dry brushed it directly onto it, no dilution or mixing at all. And it came out pretty well. One thing I will point out is that for some reason, the lighter a color is, the more grainy it comes out on dry brushing, so just FYI. But it came out pretty well. It highlighted the muscles pretty well, and you can really see all the skin tones and differences, and the skin actually looks really good. And now with a 1-to-1 mix of Golem Flesh and Contrast Medium with just a little bit of water, we're going to basically apply this on all the scars, cuts, and ritualistic tattoos that they have on them. We don't want it to pull anywhere, we just want there to be just a little bit of this paint that surrounds the scars. And now with Genestealer Purple, Nuln Oil, and Xerxes Purple, we're going to paint the claws. I'm going to start off with a layer of Xerxes Purple. And once that is done and completely dried, I'm going to take Nuln Oil and apply it all over. I then take Xerxes Purple again and dry brush it all over the claws. And once that is done, I go to Genestealer Purple and then I dry brush that all over the claws again, focusing more on the sharp edges and the more raised areas. As good as it was, it didn't stand out enough, so I took some Emperor's Children and I dry brushed it on the most raised areas and the most pronounced edges. I then took Nuln Oil again and applied it all over. And now with a 1 part Magos Purple to 3 parts Lamian Medium, essentially what I do is, with a little bit of water, I add multiple layers onto the regular flesh that's connected to the claw. I fill the recesses of his muscles with a layer of it, and once it dries, I then start applying more and more layers, gradually painting less and less, going towards the claw itself, so that the flesh around it begins to darken and purple towards the claw. Now with Baneblade Brown and Wraithbone, we're going to paint these horns and things that come out of one of the creatures. So basically we're going to start with a base layer of Baneblade Brown on the horns on his shoulder and the horns coming out of his face. We don't need to do it on the other one because he is wearing a mask and he doesn't have horns coming out of his arms. And once that is done, we will do a 1-to-1 mix of Baneblade Brown and Wraithbone with a little bit of water, and then we'll apply this on around 50 to 40% of the horns, focusing on the edges. And once that is done, we will take Wraithbone and apply it to maybe 20 to 30% of each of the horns, focusing on the edges and the very tips of them. Now with Agrax Earthshade, Cantor Blue, and Hoeth Blue, we're going to paint the eyes of the one without a mask. We'll start with Agrax Earthshade to add depth into the eyes. And then once that's done, we're going to take our darkest blue, and so one thing for these eyes, for these very tiny areas, what you want to do is water them down a bit. And so you load up your brush with it's not a wash, it's like close to a wash, but not a little thicker, and then you just tap, 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 tap into the eyes, and it fills it in perfectly. And once that dries, we take our lightest blue, Hoeth Blue I believe, and then we just apply a dot of it on there. Tap, tap, tap. And then with Eshin Grey, Nuln Oil, and Dark Reaper, we're going to paint the, clothes that the other one has. We're going to start off with a base layer of Eshin Grey all over it. And once that is done, we will take Nuln Oil and apply that all over it. Now, I then went and chose to do dry brushing instead, but I guess you could just do a feathering technique on it as well. It will do just as well for the way this model is, wide open areas with no real texture in it. I applied Eshin Grey all over, I dry brushed it here, all over the clothing part, and then once that was done, I then went with pure Dark Reaper and dry brushed it on. I spilled a little bit over onto some areas I shouldn't have, but you can clean that up later. Now with Mournfang Brown and Nuln Oil, all I'm going to do is, there are these straps on them and I want to make them visually different than the clothing and the rest of the model, so I'm going to paint them brown. So I'm going to do a basic layer of Mournfang Brown, and then a simple quick layer of Nuln Oil all over. And this also includes the sashes or underwear they're wearing. And then with Eshin Grey, we're just going to paint the bar that they're hooked to. Now, since we are done with all the regular stuff before metallics, we're going to take AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish and we're just going to apply it all over the model. And then with Army Painter Anti-Shine Matte Varnish, what we're going to do is we're going to paint this all over the clothing, like the leather stuff. I don't know how, like latex looking stuff. Now this won't give it a huge shine, but it'll give it a slight shine, which will differentiate it from everything else. Now one thing I did is I then tried to do this and apply this to his eyes and to little parts on his claw to make it look like sort of like gemstones a bit. This was a waste. Just use regular gloss varnish if you want to get an actual true shine. Alright, with Iron Warriors and Iron Hand Steel and Stormhost Silver, we're going to paint the metal parts on him. We're going to start with a base layer of Iron Warriors all over the giant plates of metal on his back, as well as the chains and other pieces of metal like the jewelry on one of the crab's left arm. Once that is done, we're going to take Iron Hand Steel and we're going to dry brush this on the steel. However, I think I screwed up the dry brushing and it kind of just covered all the Iron Warriors base. I did take the Iron Hand Steel and painted all the jewelry and stuff with this, and that turned out fine. I then tried to dry brush a little bit of Stormhost Silver on it, but it didn't really pan out too well. But painting it on a few spots on the metal jewelry on the crab claw did well. The round circular balls that are on there made them shine really well. I don't like the look that the metal has come out to, so I take Nuln Oil and dilute it a bit with Lamian Medium, like 1:1 and with some water, and I apply it all over the giant chunks of metal. But it didn't darken it enough or bring out the depth enough. In the end I decided to move on, but what I would have done is done with my darkest metal and then just apply Nuln Oil directly on it and then dry brush with that dark metal again, and that would have delivered the results I wanted. Alright, now with Brass Scorpion, Liberator Gold, and Stormhost Silver, we're going to paint the bright golden metallics. Now, one of the crab guys has a bracelet on his right arm, and he has like his metal face mask. We're just going to apply the Brass Scorpion directly on those because they have deep recesses, and so we want to fill those deep recesses. So we're only just going to paint those two little things. And then once that's done, we're going to take Liberator Gold and we're just going to paint all the edging and stuff, all the stuff that's going to be gold with Liberator Gold. That's it. And when it comes to the face mask and his bracelet, we're just going to overbrush directly on it and we will still see the bright red in the deep recesses. Now one thing I did notice when I went to the Stormhost Silver, it doesn't adhere that well in these very small little patches. So I had to get it on my brush and repeatedly tap it onto specific spots repeatedly just to get it to adhere to the metal. I don't know why that is, but so with Stormhost Silver I basically painted all the sharp edges of the metal as best I could. Sometimes just the paint wouldn't come off my brush onto the thing. And so, as best I could, I highlighted the sharp edges on all the gold pieces. And now with Liquitex Gloss Varnish, I just add shine. Now there are these gems that are on the jewelry of this crab claw. I painted them the same way I painted that guy's blue eyes. It's just simple things, and then once they were painted, I then just applied gloss varnish on them just to add the shine, and I applied the gloss varnish on the guy's claws to make it look like gems, and his eyes again. This made it shine better. And done is done. Well, I also forgot to mention that whatever that is holding them also has those blue gem-like eyes, so I forgot to mention that. I mean, these models are straightforward and simple. There's a lot of detail on them though, on the skin and stuff. The dry brushing actually allowed it to come out, as well as the claws came out pretty well, but there were some mistakes. Like, tried out that new Iron Warriors paint, didn't make it look good enough. A lot of stuff came out pretty well, but I don't know, I feel this is like a little uninspired, but when everything is paired together, like, they'll help push everything up. Like, these guys don't have to be perfect. They just have to be a good part of the centerpiece. Now, if you notice, they have certain, like, parts on their feet, like these circle things that I didn't paint. It's because I haven't made the base yet, and I haven't fully decided what I want that to be. So when I get to final assembly and making the base, I will just paint their feet whatever the color of the earth is that I'm going to be doing there. So overall, so some things went out well. The skin turned out great. This very light white skin came out great. You can see the subtle tones, you can see the depth and shadows, you can see the individual muscle fibers. The claws came out great, the gems came out great. The gold looks good, but I had to go back and fix a lot of things on it. This model was a little bit of a mess to paint. Honestly, I feel like it's a solid 7, but I think I'm pushing on 8. There's some parts about it that really turned out well. The gems, the claws, the skins, yeah, they turned out well. I'm gonna say this is an 8. These guys themselves are an 8 for all that I was able to push them through. Yeah. Any small tiny mistakes or issues are barely going to be able to be seen because they're on their stomachs and the underside, so yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, it turned out pretty well, so I'll say just barely an 8 out of 10. Alright, more to come. I'll try to pump these out faster. I'm going to be continuing the Glucose guy, Glucose guy, and a few other projects mixed in between, so like the video if you like the video, share it if you want to share it, leave a comment if you want to comment on anything or nitpick anything, and yeah, I'll see you guys hopefully soon.